Eagles 1:00 p.m. Chiefs Patriots 1:00 p.m. Saints Browns 1:00 p.m. Ravens Bills 1:00 p.m. Panthers' sanity was restored through much of the NFL on Sunday, with Tom Brady remembering how to throw touchdown passes, Jacksonville falling back down to earth, and Green Bay's defense looking like Swiss cheese again. The entire league is likely scratching its collective head, however, after the Denver Broncos simply crushed the Dallas Cowboys. Here is what we learned in Week 2. Vikings quarterback Case Keenum was hit by two Steelers as he released a pass in the second half. Don Wright, Associated Press. Full NFL. Week 2 box scores and statistics. Tom Brady does not need wide receivers. With only 3 healthy wide receivers on the active list, there was concern that New England's offense would be limited. Brady responded to the roster shortage by topping 300 passing yards in the first half for just the second time in his career. He finished the day with 447 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, and 20 of his 30 completions went to running backs and tight ends. He may not be Billy Sims, but it appears the rookie running back Kareem Hunt is a keeper. A third-round pick by the Kansas City Chiefs, Hunt set an NFL record last week with 246 yards from scrimmage in his NFL debut. He was not able to keep pace with Sims, who had a record 445 yards from scrimmage over his first 2 NFL games for the Detroit Lions, but his second start was plenty productive, with 81 rushing yards, 28 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in a win over Philadelphia. He did top Sims in one regard. Hunt became the first player in NFL history to have at least 3 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns in the first 2 games of his career. Ezekiel Elliott can be stopped, at least on occasion. The superstar running back has dominated in his short NFL career, but he could do absolutely nothing against the Denver Broncos defense. Elliott carried the ball just 9 times for 8 rushing yards in the Cowboys' 4,217 dismantling by Denver. His previous career lows were 12 carries and 51 rushing yards. He has yet to score a rushing touchdown this season after scoring 15 last year. Convincing wins may be overrated. The Carolina Panthers have not looked sharp in either game this season, but they have a 20 record to show for it. Provided the team's defense no touchdowns allowed over 2 games is as good as it seems, and the offense just 32 points thus far is not quite as meager as they have looked, the fashion in which the team won these 2 games will be long forgotten. That being said, losing Greg Olsen, the team's star tight end, in Sunday's 93 victory over Buffalo could have lasting ramifications. Jacksonville doesn't have the greatest defense of all time. Last week the unit had 10 sacks, with Calais Campbell contributing 4 of them by himself along with 6 other quarterback hits in a blowout win over Houston. While some regression to the mean was inevitable, it would have been hard to predict a 3,716 loss to Tennessee in which the Jaguars allowed 31 points in the second half. The news was not much better on offense, where Leonard Fournette, the team's rookie running back, saw his rushing total drop from 100 in Week 1 to 40 in Week 2. Joe Thomas is a marvel for a team that is frequently not worth watching. The veteran left tackle of the Cleveland Browns, who has started in each of the 162 games of his 11-season career, extended his incredible streak to 10,062 snaps without taking a playoff. Since Thomas' rookie season, the Browns have had 29 different players attempt a pass but only 1 play left tackle. Falcons receiver Julio Jones left Damarius Randall behind in the first quarter. Eric S. Lesser, European press photo agency. Falcons outplay Packers again. The Green Bay Packers put up a fight in the second half, but in a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game, they once again found themselves on the losing side, falling to the Atlanta Falcons, 3,423. Things got out of hand in the first half, when the Packers were outgained by 155 yards and outscored 247. It got immediately worse when the second half started. Aaron Rodgers was hit while throwing, and the ball was scooped up by Desmond Trufant, who ran it into the end zone to stretch the lead to 317. From that point forward, the Packers seemed to come alive, but it was far too little and far too late. In reaction to Atlanta's dismantling of the team's secondary in the playoffs, Green Bay spent the offseason rebuilding that unit, and while Kevin King proved to be a formidable addition, they still did not have enough to slow down Matt Ryan. Ryan, who threw for 392 yards and 4 touchdowns against Green Bay in the playoffs, was not quite as prolific in this game, completing 18 of 28 passes for 252 yards and 1 touchdown. Devonta Freeman added 2 rushing touchdowns, and the rest of the Falcons' scoring came on the fumble return and 2 field goals by Matt Bryant. In the difficult loss, Rodgers did get one highlight to remember when a 1-yard shovel pass to Montgomery gave him his 300th career passing touchdown. Rodgers accomplished the feat in 564 fewer attempts than Peyton Manning, who was the previous record holder. But Rodgers was unlikely to celebrate on a day in which he completed 33 of 50 passes for 343 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also accounted for 2 turnovers. More troubling than the loss was the fact that the Packers lost several key players to injuries. Mike Daniels, perhaps the team's best defender, was lost early in the game to a hamstring injury, and Jordy Nelson sat out the bulk of the game with an injured quadriceps. With health problems on the offensive line as well, the Packers will need to get healthy if they want to get back to winning against Cincinnati next week. Denver's Will Parks celebrated after an incomplete pass by Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott in the second half. Jack Dempsey Associated Press Broncos shock Cowboys in blowout. The Denver Broncos were not intimidated by a playoff-caliber team, were undeterred by a long weather delay, and rolled to a 4,217 victory over the Dallas Cowboys, punctuated by Aqib Talib streaking down the field for a 103-yard pick-six late in the fourth quarter. The game was hardly competitive. Trevor Siemian had his way with the Cowboys' defense to the tune of 4 passing touchdowns, and Denver's defense picked up their end of the bargain, making Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott look positively mortal in defeat. It seemed the only thing that could slow the Denver offense down was a 62-minute delay late in the first quarter caused by a passing lightning storm. The Broncos were up 70 when the delay started, and things seemed to take a turn shortly after play resumed, when the Cowboys were able to take advantage of a strip sack and fumble recovery to even the game at 77. The Broncos, however, continued to press, following up the Dallas touchdown by scoring touchdowns of their own on 4 consecutive possessions other than a one-player kneeling on the ball to close the first half. Siemian, who won the starting quarterback job in Denver by default after Paxton Lynch was injured, was positively electric for that middle stretch of the game, and finished the day having completed 22 of 32 passes for 231 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 fumble and 1 interception. C.J. Anderson chipped in with 25 carries for 118 yards and 1 touchdown. The Broncos' defense was even better, dismantling the star-studded Dallas offense. Elliott, the NFL's top rusher over the last 2 seasons, was held to career lows with 9 carries for 8 rushing yards, while Prescott completed 30 of 50 passes for 238 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. The loss represented a low point of sorts for Prescott, as coming into the game he had only 3 losses in his career, 2 to the Giants and 1 in a Week 16 loss to Philadelphia last season in which he only attempted 8 passes before being removed from the game. Today's game was one of the few times he has ever seemed overmatched, and things could actually have been worse, as the Denver secondary narrowly missed at least 2 more interceptions over the course of the game. The blowout win was a clear victory in all categories for Denver. The Broncos outgained the Cowboys, 380 to 260, largely on the strength of third downs. Denver converted 9 of 15 attempts while Dallas was 3 of 14. Denver even got Von Miller back on track, as the dominant defender ended a 5-game streak without a sack by recording 2 of Prescott. Now 20, Denver will go into next week's road game in Buffalo with added confidence, while Dallas will head to Arizona for a Monday night game, likely wondering what went wrong. Chris Thompson ran away from Trumaine Johnson on his way to a 61-yard touchdown in the first half. Paul Buck European press photo agency Redskins running game too much for Ramster. Washington Redskins got 2 rushing touchdowns from Chris Thompson, and a late touchdown pass from Kirk Cousins to Ryan Grant, holding off the much-improved Los Angeles Rams in a 2,720 victory on the road. Cousins, who had not done much leading up to the final scoring drive, finished the day a modest 18 for 27 for 179 yards and the 1 touchdown, but when his team needed him most with the score tied 2020, he went 4 for 4 for 51 yards, finding Grant for the go-ahead score. Until that point, the Washington offense had been mostly defined by Thompson, who contributed 77 rushing yards, 29 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns, including a highlight reel 61-yard run. According to Sportradar, Thompson topped out at 19.41 miles per hour on the run. Coming into the game, Thompson had just 3 rushing touchdowns in 36 career games. Chris Thompson 61-yard TD run. Wovsler Redskins pic.twitter.com Go Fate U, Sports No Live copyright at Sports No Live September 17, 2017 The Rams dropped 2-11 despite fighting back from a 20-10 deficit to tie the score midway through the fourth quarter. They were hopeful that they could stretch things to 20 after a 469 thrashing of Indianapolis, Indiana Week 1, but a late interception by Jared Goff following Cousins' touchdown pass essentially sealed the team's fate. Want the big sports news, highlights and analysis from a rotating cast of Times journalists, delivered to your inbox once a week? Click here to receive our weekly sports newsletter. Chargers miss kick and lose again for the second consecutive week. Young-Ho Koo, the rookie kicker of the Los Angeles Chargers, was sent out for a last-second field goal attempt, and for the second consecutive week he failed to make the kick. This week, the 44-yard attempt, which went wide right of the goal posts, resulted in a 19-17 victory for the Miami Dolphins. Jay Cutler won in his debut as the starting quarterback of the Dolphins, leading his team to a go-ahead field goal with just over a minute remaining. The Chargers got the ball back, and went 54 yards in 8 plays to set up Koo's attempt. But a week after he was blocked on what would be a game-tying kick against Denver, Koo once again failed to deliver. The Dolphins, who did not play in Week 1 because of Hurricane Irma, are now 10, while the Chargers, despite having played close games in of the season's first 2 weeks, are 0-2. The loss spoiled the Chargers' Antonio Gates passing Tony Gonzalez for the career record for touchdowns by a tight end. The record-breaking catch, which was the 112th in Gattis' career, came on a 7-yard pass in the third quarter. Jets no match for Raiders. Marshawn Lynch ran for a touchdown in his first home game with Oakland, and Derek Carr threw 3 touchdown passes to Michael Crabtree to lead the Raiders to a 4,520 victory over the Jets on Sunday. Cordarrelle Patterson and Jalen Richard added long touchdown runs to help put the game away and give the Raiders 20 wins in the opening 2 games of the season for the first time since their AFC Championship season in 2002. Josh McCown threw a pair of TD passes to Jermaine Kearse, but the Jets 0-2 proved to be no match for the more powerful and talented Raiders. Associated Press Patriots running back Rex Burkhead hauled in a touchdown pass from Tom Brady in the first quarter. Butch Dill Associated Press No receivers, no problem for Tom Braderton. Brady threw for more than 300 yards in the first half, and then put things in cruise control as the New England Patriots erased memories of an ugly Week 1 loss by beating the New Orleans Saints 3,620. Brady was forced to change things up thanks to an injury to Danny Amendola that left the Patriots with just 3 healthy wide receivers, none of whom are comfortable in the short passing game that Amendola and the injured Julian Edelman thrive in. Brady took this in stride, reworking his strategy to focus on Rob Gronkowski and the team's running backs, and found little resistance from the Saints' defense. The result was Brady reeling off a series of big plays, including touchdowns of 19, 53 and 13 yards, while completing 30 of 39 passes for 447 yards. It was the 10th 400-yard passing game of Brady's career, easing any concerns that may have crept up after Brady was held without a touchdown in loss to the Kansas City Chiefs last week. Gronkowski, who was removed toward the end of the game for precautionary reasons, was particularly impressive, catching 6 passes for 116 yards, including the 53-yard touchdown. On that play, coverage fell apart and Gronkowski found himself with 35 yards and 1 defender between him and his first touchdown of the season. The big tight end rumbled forward and then simply stepped out of Marcus Williams' tackle attempt, waltzing into the end zone for the score. Tom Brady right arrow Rob Gronkowski for a 53-yard touchdown pic.twitter.com King 32 TPZV1R Sports Notes at Sports Notes 23 September 17, 2017 If there was any cause for concern for the Patriots, it was the health of the team's already depleted core of receivers. Both Philip Dorsett and Chris Hogan limped to the sideline at various points in the second half, leaving just Brandon Cooks unscathed. While Brady thrived despite having just 10 of his 30 completions going to wide receivers, the team will likely need more help from that unit next week against Houston, especially if Gronkowski is limited. In a post-game news conference, Brady said the team works hard to game plan every week, but cited the amount of scrutiny the team puts itself under after a loss for today's sense of urgency. Our coaches were all over us this week, and they want us to get it right, he said. They want us to get it right now. The Saints, at one point down 203, did show some signs of life, including an 80-yard scoring drive in which Drew Brees found Alvin Kamara for a 38-yard completion and Brandon Coleman for a 5-yard touchdown pass. But they simply did not seem to keep up with the Patriots on either side of the field. The loss for New Orleans, which came on the 50th anniversary of the team's first game, dropped the Saints to 0-2, giving them a 111 record in September since 2014. Steelers defense takes care of Vikings for the second consecutive week. The Pittsburgh Steelers came away with a victory while not exactly convincing anyone they are world beaters. They rode two early touchdowns to a 269 victory over the Minnesota Vikings, but the win comes with the asterisk of the Vikings having played without Sam Bradford, the team's starting quarterback. The issue, once again, was a lackadaisical effort from the Steelers' offense. The unit managed just 14 points against Cleveland last week, and this week they were not much better, gaining 335 yards but settling for 4 field goals following a hot start in which the team scored touchdowns on 2 of the first 3 drives of the game. Martavis Bryant, Pittsburgh's deep threat wide receiver, was the bright spot of the game with 3 receptions for 91 yards. On Pittsburgh's second offensive drive of the game, he caught a short pass in the middle of the field and ran it in for a 27-yard touchdown. On the next drive, he drew a 49-yard pass interference penalty that set up a second touchdown. Big Ben right arrow Martavis Bryant for 6 Pity Twitter.com 65 PGWLD4H Sports Notes at Sports Notes 23 September 17, 2017. But just like last week, it was Pittsburgh's defense that seemed to take care of business, while the offense mostly sputtered. Ben Roethlisberger completed 23 of 35 passes for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns, one of which went to Juju Smith-Schuster, the NFL's youngest player. Le'Veon Bell, the team's superstar running back, had 27 carries for 87 yards a week after rushing for just 32 against Cleveland, and Antonio Brown had 5 catches for 62 yards. After the game, Roethlisberger seemed a bit defensive about his offense's performance. "We're just winning football games," he told reporters. "We're 20. We did what we had to do. We won the football game." The Vikings were forced to switch to Case Keenum at quarterback after Bradford was a late scratch, and the veteran backup led the team to a touchdown and a field goal while throwing for 159 yards. Bradford, who is a huge key to Minnesota's playoff hopes, is expected to be back next week for the Vikings game against Tampa Bay. Cardinals safety Tyrann Mathieu intercepted a pass in overtime to set up Arizona's winning field goal. Joe Robbins Getty Images Brissett throws away Colts chance. Arizona Cardinals came away with a 16-13 overtime win over the Indianapolis Colts thanks to Jacoby Brissett throwing his first career interception. It was a strong start for Brissett, the young quarterback of the Colts who recently came over in a trade with the New England Patriots. He had his team leading 100 after the first quarter, and for the game completed 20 of 37 passes for 216 yards. Tyrann Mathieu interception in overtime sets up a game-winning field goal. Honey Badger N.f.l. as Sunday Z Cardinals Bird Gang Beredsid Pic.Twitter.com Updreet 1 Ajwi, Ronnie Leibold at Yotesh Tuesday September 17, 2017. Arizona was able to creep back into the game and send it to overtime, but Brissett, asked to keep the Colts afloat until Andrew Luck can return, had the ball with a chance to win. Unfortunately for the Colts, Brissett, who did not throw an interception in any of his 3 appearances for New England last season, was picked off on his first pass of overtime by Tyrann Mathieu. With a short field in front of them, the rest was largely a formality, as the Cardinals drove the ball just 9 yards and then won on a 30-yard field goal by Phil Dawson. Chiefs hold on to beat Eagles. Chiefs rookie Kareem Hunt reached the end zone twice. Travis Kelce took a shovel pass 15 yards for the go-ahead touchdown, and Kansas City held on to beat the Philadelphia Eagles 2,720 on Sunday. Kelce's touchdown catch with 625 left and Hunt's second TD scamper appeared to have put the game away. But Carson Wentz hit Nelson Agholor for an answering score with 14 seconds left, and Trey Burton jumped on the onside kick a few seconds later to give the Eagles one last throw to the end zone. Wentz unloaded from just inside the 50-yard line, but his pass fell incomplete as time expired. Kelce finished with 103 yards through the air, highlighted by his somersaulting score. Hunt had 81 yards on the ground, building on a record-setting debut in which he piled up 246 yards from scrimmage in a season-opening victory in New England. Around the NFL, Jameis Winston threw for 204 yards and 1 touchdown Sunday, helping the Tampa Bay Buccaneers return from an unscheduled bye week forced by Hurricane Irma to open the season with a 297 rout of the mistake-prone Chicago Bears. The defense stymied former teammate Mike Glennon with 4 turnovers. Robert McClain returned one of the quarterback's 2 interceptions for a TD, and the Bucs' didn't let the Bears into the end zone until Deontay Thompson scored on a 14-yard reception with 143 remaining. Carolina's defense allowed only 3 points for the second straight week, and Graham Gano converted 3 field goals as the Panthers held on to defeat the Buffalo Bills 93 to remain unbeaten. The Panthers lost Pro Bowl tight end Greg Olsen with a broken right foot. Derrick Henry, Delanie Walker and Jalston Fowler each ran for touchdowns, and the Tennessee Titans dominated the Jacksonville Jaguars in the second half for a 3,716 victory. Baltimore relentlessly harassed 2 Cleveland quarterbacks. Joe Flacco ramped up his production with a pair of touchdown passes, and the Ravens breezed past the Browns 2,410 on Sunday. Building on their season-opening shutout at Cincinnati, the Ravens picked off 4 passes and forced a fumble, giving them 10 takeaways in 2 games. Associated Press correction, September 18, 2017. An earlier version of this article misstated the way the Vikings scored their 9 points. They had a field goal and a touchdown with a missed extra point, not 3 field goals.